thank you everybody for coming today. This is the busy webinar for July. My name is Trigvi. I am the Buzz Development Director here at BusyWeb. A couple of administrative things before we begin. If you are listening to this live, so on Wednesday the 14th at noon Central Time, I am monitoring the Q&A and the chat pane simultaneously. Yes, I am that talented that I'm able to do all of those things. So what I'd like to do, just to make sure that everybody can hear me appropriately and hear me, could you mind letting me know that you can hear me by putting something in the chat pane and letting me know where you are coming in from? So let me know that you're here and that you can hear me and where you are from. That would help me knowing that everything is working right on my end. Tampa, Florida. Wow, cool. Nice to see you, Valerie. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm assuming since Valerie can hear me, some other folks. Martha from CIF Minneapolis. Cool. Great to see you, Martha. And I'm just going to assume that we are good to go. So once again, this is the Busy Webinar. This is something we do every month here at BusyWeb. So if you're interested in more, we will certainly accommodate. If you're not familiar with BusyWeb, we are a full service growth marketing agency based here in the Twin Cities. What does that mean? It means that we are specialists in helping your company grow through finding you more revenue-based opportunities. We use a couple of different tools in order to do that. We are a master of digital marketing. We also are pretty darn good at inbound marketing. In addition to that, we also have a web design part of our firm, all of which ties together in varying degrees, which we're going to talk a lot today about how we can make the most difference for you. We're a Grow with Google partner, we're a HubSpot agency partner, and we're a Constant Contact certified as well. So we know this stuff hopefully pretty well. No, I'm bearing the lead a little. Yes, we know this very well. So thanks, and it looks like we did get a couple of latecomers. If you wouldn't mind just letting me know that you can hear me by putting in where you're calling in from in the chat pane, that'll help me know that I am working. Also, for those of you who can hear me during this time, I will be taking questions at any time. If you can put in where you are, what your question is, I will do my best to monitor the chat pane and to answer your questions. So let's get in our car and go to Chicago. Why not? It's the summer. It's great. Can we go from Tampa? Can we go from Iowa? Can we go from Brandon, South Dakota? Can we just drop what we're doing right now and go to Chicago? We're here. We want to go there. Can we do it? The answer is yes, of course. But in order to do that, the question then becomes, how do we get there? How do we do the thing that we want to do? Our goal is to get to Chicago. And really, there's no wrong way to get to Chicago from wherever you are. Obviously, the person who is calling in from Mumbai, they're going to have a little bit longer of a drive than the folks from Iowa. But, you know, if you get in the car and you start driving, eventually you could inevitably end up in Chicago. So, well, I mean, technically you could drive into Lake Michigan and that would be wrong, but you know, you get the point. So, okay, so we want to go to Chicago. We're going to drive to Chicago. That's how we're going to get there. In order to get there, what do we really need in order to get there? Well, we've got a goal. Our goal is to get to Chicago. Well, to achieve that goal, we've got to expend some resources. We've got to expend some time and money, and we've got to plan ahead, because wherever you are, there's one way that costs the least and is the fastest to get to the goal, to get to Chicago. And then finally, we have to ask the question, is it worth it? Well, even if you go with a buddy, somebody's always going to pay for gas. And if Cameron from Ferris Bueller taught us anything, you can't rewind the mileage on a car. You've got to keep going no matter what. You can look back and you've got to learn, and you can learn, but ultimately what you have to get from an effort has to be worth the effort to get there. So we're going to take this analogy of driving to Chicago and we're going to blow it out and focus it in on marketing and the importance of creating a digital marketing strategy so we can get to Chicago as quickly as we need to. I'm going to break this down into 5 different categories. Number 1 is setting goals. How do we set a goal? How do we set a realistic goal? Next, I'm going to talk about personas. 3rd, tactics. 4th, pulling it all together. And then 5, how do you actually manage all this? So once again, if you are participating live, feel free and ask any question as you like in the chat pane, but let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're setting a goal. Okay, we want to get out, we want to be out, we want to get to Chicago because life moves pretty fast. And if you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. But any specific goal, any goal for us is going to be specific to our business. And it's really going to be specific to what we want to accomplish. Then the question becomes, how does our website fit in? And a lot of people, that question is very malleable because they think, well, gosh, my website isn't really that big of a deal. But it's really the jumping off point for anything related to your digital footprint and really anything related to marketing. In this day and age, the 1A of any but new sales interaction is somebody's going to check out your website. And then the question becomes, what metrics matter? How do we really know where we've got to Chicago? If we got to the outlying parts of Chicago, is that our goal? Or have we really been all the way downtown Wrigley Field? What really matters? Well, in order to do that, we want to make our goals as smart as possible. So when we talk about making smart goals for a website, but also for a marketing strategy on the whole, we want to make them specific. And this is a SMART is an acronym. So SMART, it starts with specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. If we're not doing any of these things, we're really just sort of throwing spaghetti up against the wall and seeing what sticks. If we're not doing these things, we're really not going to know when we've achieved our goal. The nice thing about using a road trip analogy, of which I'm going to weave in all through the day today, is there's a definitive start and there's a definitive finish. But with marketing, you don't really know that unless you start creating some goals that are actually achievable. What do I mean about what's an achievable goal? Well, I'd like to double my business. Is that an achievable goal? Well, it really depends on your individual situation. Doubling your business is easy enough to do when there's only 1 client and you double to 2. But if you've got a $5 million business and you want to double to 10, that becomes infinitely harder. So when we're creating our SMART goals, what we want to ask ourselves is, what really is the overall goal? What are we trying to achieve? Not just in marketing, but really on the business on the whole. More than likely, that's going to be revenue based. We want to sell more things. We want to sell more services. We want to sell more goods. Then what's the marketing need that fits into that? How do we accomplish that? Then let's put some numbers on it. We're going to achieve this by going, we're going to grow by 10%. We're going to grow by 15%. Next, we want to analyze our current situation. What are the assets we have to get there? Well, we've probably got a website. We may have some social things. We may have some email. I don't know. All of those go, none of what you have is bad. One of the things that we're going to talk about today, the great big secret of marketing, is none of what you have is bad, but it could be a little bit better. So what is the time frame you're looking at in order to achieve your goal? What's realistic to achieve that goal? Then how much time do you have in order to do it? Again, if I want to double my business by the end of the month, that's achievable if I only have 1 customer. But again, that's 2 weeks to do that. That's not a realistic time frame to achieve that goal. And then finally, what really is your biggest challenge? So as we're creating a goal, following a SMART template, and this is something that we have as a resource on our website, and you're going to get an email from me after today. So if you want this SMART marketing goals template, I can absolutely provide it to you free of charge, no problem. Just drop me an email after the fact. So That's our goal. So our goal is to get to Chicago. Now we start talking about resources. How do we get there? What are the things that we want to take along the trip? Well, the first thing that we're going to take is we're going to take a trip buddy, because nobody really likes going anywhere by themselves. So if we're going to take a trip buddy, the best thing to do is figure out who our best buyer persona is. So think of that as your road trip buddy. A bad road trip buddy makes the trip so much longer. It's going to be so much harder, but a good road trip buddy is going to make it so much more exciting and effective. What does this really mean in terms of marketing and business? It means that your persona really needs to focus on who is your best fit customer. Who is the person that you would like to sell to in a fictionalized sense? That's the person you're going to take on your strategic trip. So why are personas so important? Well, a lot of times what we see here at BusyWeb when companies come to us for help is they've got content, but it's not engaging to the audience, or the message that they're putting out isn't interesting to prospects. Sometimes people don't click on the calls to action. Oftentimes what we see is good leads just aren't coming in. They're getting a lot of stuff through the website, but none of it's particularly good and none of it's particularly helpful. So that's good. That means you're not focusing on the right person to direct your marketing to, and you're not focusing on the right person that you really want to sell to. So who is your buyer persona? The answer is not everyone. If you take anything from our time here together today, it's this. You do not sell to everyone. Unless you are love or shelter or food, you are not selling to everyone. So if your buyer is going to be completely unique to you, what their needs are, what their wants are, and what your solution is all going to be very specific to them. So the real question is, who is your favorite customer that you have right now? Of that favorite customer, why are they your favorite customer? Figure out who your favorite customer is and then write a fictionalized representation of them. What are their wants? What are their goals? What are their frustrations? What are their motivations? What are the brands that influence them? How do they gather information? Where do they gather information? If we think about these things ahead of time, then you're not going to be stuck in a car with somebody who wants to listen to the 500 Miles song over and over and over again. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we plot out the trip way ahead of time. So what buyer personas are not target markets. They're not somebody with a specific title. Oops. They're not a specific person. Like, we're not trying to sell to Dave. We're trying to sell to somebody like Dave. And we're not dependent on a specific tool or technology, but we all do want to know why they use our particular service and why they're interested in our particular solution. Why is having this person with you? It's because it's going to be useful on every single part of the journey. So this is what a buyer's journey really looks like in the grand scheme of things and how people buy. And if you're anything like me, you look at that and you're sort of aghast and thinking, that's a lot. How do I manage all of that? Well, number one, that's what a strategy is for. Number two is it's a 5-stage positioning where really the third stage is purchase, but there's still money to be had in retention and advocacy. And that's important, and that does need to be accounted for in strategic marketing. But when we're thinking about what our buyer is, realistically, when the question I asked you is, who's your favorite customer right now? That person is really going to be in that last two arrows there, the retention and the advocacy, because they're still your favorite. You still enjoy working for them. You still like talking to them. Okay, well, why is that? And then how do we do that where we can then back it up several stages and then figure out how do we replicate that? We do that because you can see there's all sorts of different ways now. There's almost 24 different ways people can find us and start interacting with us. And if we know where the ones that we really want to deal with are, then we can focus exclusively on those channels. But we don't know that unless we strategize ahead of time. And if we know where our persona is, then we know where we need to do to go get them. Think of it like a fishing hole. You're not going to just throw something into a lake and hope You're going to really try and ask around and figure out where the best fishing holes are. So when you're creating a persona, how exactly do you do that? Well, part of this overall strategy that we're talking about today is working on this kind of thing. So there's really 4 steps that we go through when we do this for clients at BusyWhip. Number 1 is identify what are the questions that we really want to ask them. And I'm going to have some sample questions for you coming up next. Next, we want to talk about how we're going to research them. Who's a favorite? If you're anything like any company, your service people are going to have a favorite, your salespeople are going to have a favorite, and then your marketing people are going to have a favorite. So you can synthesize that into one, or maybe you even have 3 different answers to that questions. Compile your research on who those favorite people are, and then transform your notes into a complete persona. And there's a tool that HubSpot uses. It's their marketing persona builder, which is great. It's free. Definitely encourage you to check that out. What are some of the questions that you really want to ask as part of your overall strategy? Things like, what is the role? What is your job title? How is your success measured for you? What's a typical day? What knowledge do you use? Who do you report to? One of my favorite questions that I ask people all the time is, what do I need to do to make you look great? I'm not so much concerned about how can I sell you something, but on an emotional level, what can I do to make your life more awesome? And what's the problem that you have that you really need some help with? We also want to look at the company, what type of work you do, what industry you're in, what size you are, what's your competition, what are your challenges, what are your goals, and what's your personal background. Oftentimes you find married people are very different than single people. It's not a bad thing. We're not choosing one over the other. We're just saying that their motivations, their reason for being is different. And then finally, what are their shopping preferences? And I know you might be thinking, well, gosh, Trigby, if I'm working B2B, I don't necessarily care what people's shopping preferences are. My response to that is, yes, you do. Because even in the B2B world, people are still shopping you. And even in the B2B world, they're still looking for another reason to leave you. So you can't give them that. And you always got to work on your retention. You want to tailor your questions to your industry, obviously. And this is where the strategic work really comes in and why there really isn't a one-size-fits-all concept for digital marketing. Because people in your industry are going to have very specific goals. People in your industry are going to have very specific challenges, very specific things that are going to make their job unique and different. As a result of that, where they go to read, what they're interested in, and how they're interested in it are going to be completely different. So it's very much important to make sure that when you're specializing in an industry, you're talking to the right people in the industry. Okay, so let's talk tactics. If you're like me and I'm in the business, you get the email, I don't know, let's say 2 or 3 times a day, every single day, where one person out of nowhere says, hey, I know this is a cold email, but hey, I just happened to notice that you do this one thing out in the world and you suck at it. I'd like to help you. Can I help you? And you're just like, really? You don't even know me. You don't even know what I want. You don't even know what I'm dealing with. And you want to tell me how you can do this better. Super. Thanks. Well, here's the second main point that I want you to remember as you leave here today. Here's the truth, is what you need and what your company needs, even within a specific industry, is going to be very different than anybody else. Who your buyer is, your ideal buyer, is going to be specific to you. Your geography matters. On the call here today, we have people from Minneapolis, we have people from South Dakota, we have people from Tampa, Florida. That geography matters. Your competition matters. Who you're competing with to be the best solution to the problem means not whether or not you have got the best solution, but whether or not you're selling the best solution. What do you have that's really great right now? What are your existing assets that are better than anybody else? And finally, how much time do you have to do all of this? Maybe somebody you might be a marketing coordinator, and maybe this might be your entire job. Maybe some of you have been forced into the marketing realm by saying, well, now you're the director of sales and marketing. Or maybe you're not even that, you're just in sales and you just want some more darn leads. So how much time you have to dedicate to tactics. And when you get that email, one of the reasons why that email is so attractive to most people is they think, well, maybe I'm not doing it very well. Well, I'm here to tell you, that's not true. You are, and we can break this down to make your life a little easier. So first things first, there's going to be 4 tactics that I'm really going to be talking about today. Some of these I'm rounding up into other things, but really the 4 tactics that I'm really going to be going into today. First is content. This used to be a big problem back when social media started in 2008, 2009, when it really started to take full hold. And I would get the question all the time of, nobody cares what I had for breakfast this morning. Why should I post that? Well, now the food industry is a billion-dollar industry as it relates to social media, but the question really becomes, why do you need to plan the content? Well, there's a number of different reasons why it's important to plan out what you're going to do. The least of which is you don't have to wake up every day and think, what am I going to write today? So what are some of the good reasons why to strategically plan out what you're going to do for content and how you're going to interact with the world is, number one, it gives what you say a roadmap. You're not going to have to worry about it because you've already thought about it. You're going to connect your short-term tasks to your long-term goals. So if our goal is 15% more revenue, well, we don't just go find that. We break that down into clients, and then we have got to attract clients, and then we've got to, in order to attract clients, we've got to do content. So if we're thinking ahead of where we want to go, we can plan out how we're going to get there. It's also identifying opportunities and potential roadblocks. If you find things that are on your website that because you haven't looked at in a while, and there's a spelling error, or if you look at something and think, man, I wouldn't want to pick up the phone and call those people, that's a good reason to make a change. So the exercise that I would give you to think about is as follows. Go onto your website and really give yourself an honest run and time it, and set, if you got a watch that can do a countdown, do a 5-second timer. And once you're wet, and then click the mouse. And as soon as you click, start the stopwatch. And within 5 seconds, can you actually answer the question, do I know what I want somebody to do when they come to this website? Most of the time, the answer is no. If you're planning out your content, it ensures everything has a purpose. Content helps with SEO, which helps with search ranking, which helps with visibility, which helps get you more leads. It all folds in on itself. And finally, the most interesting part about content is that it'll help you create business alignment. If you're like any business, more than likely your salespeople and your marketing people think that they're 2 very different animals. They think they're cats and dogs. It doesn't have to be that way. Each of them have specific wants and needs, but everybody's trying to go towards that specific goal. Everybody's trying to go to Chicago. They have different ways of getting there. If they work together, off a common map, then they're going to come to a better agreement, which ultimately will make your life a little easier. Oops. Wrong button. One moment, please. There we go. And I screwed that up a little. So for those of you who are online with me live right now, my apologies. Can you go ahead and go into the chat pane and tell me what you see on your screen? It should be 3 words, just so I know that I've got this back where it needs to be. SEO. Thank you, Valerie. All right. So why do we need to plan out SEO? This is one of these big things that we get that email about how you're not ranking for SEO all that well. Now, chances are that's not true, but how do we do that? Well, number one, planning out SEO makes your money smarter. If you're truly trying to achieve a specific goal, then SEO falls into and under that goal as an important tactic to get there. It also helps you focus on really what's important and what you can compete against and what you really shouldn't worry about. It also helps you make good content choices. If you know the words involved that you're really trying to rank for, and people who are your best customers are really keying in on, then you absolutely know where those people are going to be, and it helps you with your content choices. And ideally, it gives search engines a way to find you, and it gives people a way to find your solution, because that's really all anybody cares about in this day and age is, I have a problem, can you solve it? Everything else is in service of those two things. And then finally, your content now has a purpose beyond people reading it. Yes, people reading it is important, but also the search engines want to read it. So you want to make sure it's as useful as possible. Now, if you've snuck ahead a little and you're thinking ahead here, you might realize, those two things are interconnected, and you'd be right. The third is social media. Why do you need to plan out social media? Well, the most important question that I get in this day and age, especially because there are new social channels popping up all the time, and everything you hear in the news today is all about how people you do this and do that on social. So the question people ask me is, what channel really should I be on? What's the thing that matters the most for me? The answer is truly, it depends. You don't really know what the best channel is for you until you really understand who you want to talk to the most. Not everybody, the people that you want to talk to the most. Once you know where those people are, then it's a pretty self-evident list of where you need to be and how you need to be promoting your business. Social also works with SEO to boost your ranking. It's a cheap way to get people to get more organic ranking, and obviously get people to look at your stuff, because it's also a great way to show more than just what you solve. So I said, here's the fundamental question of, I have a problem, can you solve it? The next question that people ask in that buyer's journey is, do I want you to solve it? And if you don't like somebody, or they're not fun, or you don't want to spend time with them, people are evaluating you in that way. And if they don't like you, they're gone. So what are the things that you can do to show your culture, show who you are as people? Social is a great way to do that. And be honest, because that's really the most important thing. You have value, you are a worthwhile person. People want to work with you, so just show them why. Combining social with content planning, and as a result, SEO, gives you a lot of things. It gives you focus. You can create themes, and even answers the fundamental, what do we post today question? Because if you've planned ahead and know what you're going to do, then you never really have that question to think about. The fourth tactic that I wanted to talk about today was email marketing. And people ask me all the time, well, is email dead? And the answer is absolutely not. You should always plan to have email as part of a strategy and have a strategic plan for email. Why do you want to do that? Well, if you really want to do it, it's about a 400% ROI if it's done correctly and done well. And you're thinking, no, that can't be right. Did he mistype that? No, I didn't. 400% ROI. By and large, if you do email well, you should, for every dollar you spend on email marketing, you should get about 40 bucks back. That's because it's really effective. And if you doubt whether or not I'm telling the truth or not, ask yourself one question. How many times have you checked your email today? I actually counted. I have a little piece of paper that I have written here. I was preparing this presentation. I was doing some things. My son's birthday is in a week and a half. So I had a lot of things going on. My number since 8:30 this morning, so 4 hours, of which half an hour and an hour of that I've been talking, was 14. So it's a light day for me, and I've looked at my email 14 times. Is it important for you to be in a place where somebody's been 14 times in the morning? The answer should be yes. Too much is too much, though. So if you get an email over and over and over again, or you're just overwhelmed, you just want to turn it off. So you have to be judicious in how you do it and how you go about using it. The best example I can give you is, I'm in the market for a car, and I found one that I like. It's in Northern Virginia in the United States, and I live in Minnesota. Well, in order to get there, I either have to fly, pick up the car and drive it home, or I can have it put on a truck. Well, I went to this website and I put my name in to get a quote on what it would cost to transport. And since that point, I've been contacted by 48 companies. No lie, 48 companies, all of which want to earn my business in order to get there. And there's a whole big mess and a whole scam. And I don't even know if there's a good person in there or not. So I'm just turning the whole thing off. Email marketing also gives you a different type of selling because it helps you build evangelists. Remember, I showed you that graph of the buyer's journey, and it doesn't end with just the purchase. It goes beyond the purchase because it helps you build evangelists, because it reminds them that they had this great experience with you, and it reminds them why they purchased with you in the first place. And if you do that, and they are truly happy, chances are good when somebody asks the question, hey, do you know somebody who does this? They're going to say, oh, yeah, I do. Let me forward you an email. Something you might see often is if you subscribe to an email and then you read it, and then at the bottom there's a button that says subscribe to this email, and you think, well, that's dumb. I've already subscribed to the email. Why do I need to do it a second time? That's because it's not for you. It's the hope in which you would forward it on to somebody else, and they would be so interested, and they would get their own subscription. Finally, email helps put your content in front of the people who've already seen you because they've already given you their email and said, yes, it's okay to contact me. And then now you're going to put it right in front of them to hit it again and again. You're going to do it on a regular basis, and you're going to be calm about it and remind them of the value that you provide. So of those 4 tactics, as you can see, one leads to the other, leads to the other. Now, here's where it gets fun. Because we're talking about Chicago today, here's the great big marketing secret. All of these things are interconnected. And all of these things individually matter to you about how you do them. There is no great formula that says if you put in 2 times the amount of money and effort into SEO that you'll get 2 times the result. There is no formula that says if you send out more content or create more content, you're going to get the most result. Think of it like that, the analogy of going to Chicago. Just putting the gas down just means you're going faster, but that doesn't mean you're going in the right direction. So all of these things are interconnected, but we still have to be focused on the goal and have that strategic thinking in place of, we really want to go to Chicago. How do we do that? And what's the quickest way to get there? I showed this presentation to somebody today, and they told me I needed to add this slide about the difference between goals versus tactics goals. So in our Chicago analogy, think of it this way. Our goal is we're going to get to Chicago. How are we going to get there? Well, we're going to drive. How do we measure whether or not the drive is successful? Because we're going to end up there eventually. Well, here's a tactic goal. So for that thing that we're doing in order to achieve our goal, if we got 30 miles to the gallon, then that'll have been successful. Now, how does this translate into marketing effort? Well, it would look something like this. So the business goal is we want to get 10% new customer leads from our marketing. The tactic that we're going to do it is going to be inbound marketing. And that's a specific marketing thing, and I can give you more details on that later if you're interested. But it's cool and it's fun, and hooray. So the tactic goal, how do we know whether or not that goal is successful? Is, well, we're going to get 50% more traffic from sales qualified leads, SQLs. That's a fancy marketing term. But realistically, what that SQL means is that the ideal customer profile buyer, the people who fit our persona that we dealt with earlier, again, you can see how it gets interconnected. We can measure whether or not the leads that we got because of the marketing effort are helping us achieve our goal. Now, how do we measure all this? How do we work on all this? The easiest way to do this is create some dashboards. So a strategy is going to help you lay out, here's our plan. In the old days, when my daughter rolls her eyes now because my daughter's 22 is the old days back in the aughts. If we were going to go somewhere, we would print out directions on how to get there. So that's what a dashboard is. It's a printout of the directions of how we're going to get there and how we're going to track the performance. We're also can do things like plan our themes for content, manage our wish list. Really, can we do this, this, and this? And then what are the things that we have to do right now? It can also help us focus our effort. So if we're identifying content, we're identifying the communication channels, we know where those are because those where our ideal customers are. Boom. Then we know where we need to focus our efforts because that's where the big fish are because we've thought about it ahead of time. And the goals are just as important to keep everybody in touch with and have be right on the tip of your tongue at all times. So the company strategy determines the goals for marketing. So we as an organization have an overall goal of X. And how do we answer that? Well, I've talked a little bit about it today, but really the question is, where do we want to be this time next year? Then we're going to design, plays in our playbook on how to do that and how to get there. And we're going to measure them through specific ways. And then we can also check overall measurement over the course of a year. In our Chicago analogy, think of it like, how close are we to our goal? Well, if we're 106 miles away from Chicago, then we know we're closer than we were 20 minutes ago. In order to do that, you consider baseline data. So what we suggest our clients do at BusyWeb when we do this and we go through their assets in order to achieve this is we establish a baseline for all the areas you're tracking. Because number one is, remember we talked about that guy who sends you that email that says that you suck at things and I told you, no, you don't. Well, we do need to figure out where you are at and where you want to be and what's the difference. So in creating that baseline data, we're able to identify the things that we want to track interactions against. It helps us set some realistic goals. And it also helps us see monthly cycles in our business. A lot of times people's business are seasonals and they don't really see it unless they plot this out well ahead of time. But most importantly, it'll help us isolate user behavior. So we know exactly what the people that we want to know are doing, and we can replicate that as much as possible. So in doing so, take each month, tally up all the interactions that you want to track and see how close are we to our goal. Our goal is to get to Chicago. Are we 10, 20, 50, 100% of the way there? Last year when we wanted to do this, how quickly did it take us to get to Chicago? What's working and what isn't? And then can we change and what do we need that has a little bit more refinement? What we really like at BusyWeb is we operate on the EOS system, which has its pluses and minuses. But one of the cool things about it is having a scorecard. And it really helps break down an individual list of what do we want to do and make it into bite-sized pieces. So it'll help you understand progress at a glance. It'll help you refine the campaigns. It'll help you really see, are the things you're doing really leading to the goal or not? And it also helps with consolidated numbers for ease of reporting. Because all of this that I said, all is very sophisticated and a little bit nerdy from numbers. But if you're talking to somebody who's upstairs in the C-level, they're going to want a quick brief and 3 or 4 bullet points. So consolidated numbers on your growth, very important. And finally, it'll help you know what to work on next. And where do you go from here? So that once you hit Chicago, where do you go from here? So I'm going to stop for questions and take a drink of water. If you are listening to this live, please feel free and add a question to the chat pane because I am monitoring it while I take my drink of water. All right, looks like we didn't get any questions. So, what is an EOS system? Asks Valerie. It stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you look on Amazon for a book by a guy named Gino Wickman, that can help you. It's a common framework on running a business where you're figuring out strategically what you want to do and then breaking it into bite-sized pieces to make sure that you're getting there. No problem. Okay, so in recap, setting goals is great, and there's a lot of different ways to get there. But one way is the most fast and most efficient, and the only way that you're going to find it is through strategic thinking and creating a strategy for your marketing. Marketing tactics work best when they work in concert, and how they work best entirely depends on a number of different factors. So thinking about what you're going to do before you do it is absolutely critical to your success. So I do have a gift for those of you who stayed all the way through. I'm going to send you an email later today where we do have a quiz that will help you measure what assets do you have that are really good, what assets do you have that you need to work on, and what do you need to plan next. It'll take you about 5 to 10 minutes to do. It's going to be emailed to you. We'd love for you to see it. Finally, next month, I am taking a break. You're going to get a special guest star. Dave Meyer from Google is going to speak. Dave is also the president of BusyWeb, and he's going to talk about how to make better decisions with Google Analytics, how to look at it, how to understand reports, and then using analytics with other Google tools. That's going to be Wednesday the 4th at 12 Central. And you can go there at, you can sign up for that at busyweb.com/events. Finally, I did want to mention, because somebody bet me that I wouldn't, that Vive la France, today is Bastille Day and French Independence Day. So congratulations, France. Here's my information. If you'd like to get a hold of me after the fact, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what your challenges are and what you're working on right now, and what I can do to brainstorm with you to try and be more successful. You can reach me at trigby@busyweb.com, and that's my phone number, 651-252-4052. And then I couldn't really do an entire deck on Chicago and Ferris Bueller and the Blues Brothers without ending with this. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your July, and I can't wait to talk to you soon.